Welcome to the Backlot 605 podcast. I am one of your hosts. I'm Casey Kelderman.
I'm Brian Mensing.
And today we are going to be joined by a special guest. She is on the line right now. This is Airlie Dodds, the lead actress, the star of the Shudder Exclusive film, The Furies. Airlie, how are you today?
I'm good. My name's Airlie.
Airlie?
A-I-I-L-I.
And I just said that before I started recording this. I'm bad at messing up names, and here I mess up yours right away.
Maybe she did that on purpose.
I think so.
So ironic. It's good. It's a funny one. It's funny.
So you are calling in from Australia. How are things in Australia compared to South Dakota right now, where it is snowing as we speak?
It is. Let me check. It's 25 degrees? A little bit cloudy and a bit of spring kind of chill. But the sun's out, and we've got the screening of The Furies today at Monster Fest in central Melbourne, so that'll be fun. Very jet lagged. I just flew in from Milan last night, but feeling good. I've got coffee on drip, kind of just loving it.
Just have coffee running through the veins to keep you going.
Just live off the caffeine.
Yeah.
And I've got to speak at this screening, and I think I'm going to kind of run my mouth just because I've had like 4 of these already, and I'm amongst horror fans, so I think it might go fine either way. But I'm battling through. But I'm really happy to be talking to you guys. Did you like the film?
Yeah, I had a chance to watch it last week. Brian, I
literally finished it about 25 minutes ago.
Oh my god! Did you go for a walk, or did you have a coffee, or something?
No, unfortunately my schedule made me basically have to watch it in 2 parts. But yeah, I watched about the last hour of it here just a little bit ago. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I definitely did.
Good.
Yeah, so for people listening, could you describe what The Furies is about? Because I have my own way of kind of describing it, but I want to hear how you would describe the film to people listening.
I think The Furies is kind of like a fairy tale, like a kind of modern twist on the slasher trope, which kind of has all of the preoccupations of a slasher and then tries to kind of gobble that up and spit out something new about women. So it's about this girl called Kayla who she really battles with herself and her own self-confidence, and in a kind of fairy tale way. And kind of, when we were talking about, you were saying you liked that Halloween film, her kind of worst nightmare is that she's separated from her best friend in the same way that Jamie Lee Curtis's character, I think I was reading that, like, in that film, she's all she wants is like the perfect boyfriend, and all Kayla really wants is to kind of never be separated from her best friend. And then ultimately the nightmare of that happens, and she's thrust into this Hunger Games style situation where she's forced to fend for herself, and she's kind of forced into moral ambiguity. So I hope that answers the question without giving away too much, but that would be my thought. But I think horror is so divisive, and people project all different kinds of things onto what they see. So, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that perfectly sums it up. In my mind, while I was watching it, it was like it's Halloween meets the most dangerous game, like almost. And it's these group of killers that are after these women. It's not just one masked man after, a single girl or a single girl and her friends. No, it's these random group of people that are just thrust into this terrible game and have to form alliances or decide who they can trust and who they can't trust. It's just just one of those most dangerous games that you can't imagine yourself ever wanting to be a part of.
Can you imagine that this was like a Hunger Games type of?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a Hunger Games, but the men are cast into the game as well, and the men are just as much, I guess, if not more, victims of this game because they're stripped of their humanity. And I think the women are ultimately allotted with the choice as to whether they're going to do that or not. And I think Tony went in more to the female side of that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
By choosing to mask the men and make them monsters.
Now, the question I have for you, first of all, is what drew you to this role of playing Kayla? Like, she's such a within the confines of this story, she's a very complex character with complex things going on, not just as a part of the game, but she also throughout the film she suffers from epilepsy and has different visions throughout the film. What was it like playing a character like that?
I think we talk so much about who we think we are, like almost excessively nowadays. We have such strong ideas about who we are because of the societies we live in, but I think our actions define us, like that's ultimately who we are. And I was kind of drawn to her because she has a perception of herself that she's an incredibly meek person who lacks resilience, and I think it's often the shyest people who have anything but, so I was drawn to the fact that she didn't really know herself, that she was really vulnerable, and that I was drawn to the arc and the film because she ultimately discovers that in a really costly sense, and I thought that was quite similar to life, in the confines of this fantasy world or this thing. I think we talk so much about who we think we are and what we think we do, but we don't really know until we're in the situation, and I thought that was really honest. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it definitely does. It's something that one of my questions coming up is going to be about like the trope of the final girl or the scream queen, if you will, and how your character pretty much takes that, and pretty much every character in this movie, and almost takes that and just flips it on its head, because these women they're fighting back this entire time. There's really no holding back throughout the film with each of these characters in it.
No.
Yeah, I think. I mean, is that the question? Do you want to?
No, the question I have with that is did you draw any inspiration from some of the iconic final girls out there, or scream queens out there? Because one character that your character reminded me of was Alice from the first Friday the 13th, where she's also very, very meek and soft spoken, and but at the end, in the end of Friday the 13th, she cuts the killer's head off. It's the empowering of these characters.
I think the thing that Tony was really adamant about, and the thing that I think comes through, is that the female characters, they have each a unique set of resources. Like Kayla, she uses her compassion to get ahead in the game. She doesn't use her sexuality, or she doesn't use, you know what I mean? Like, the camera doesn't find her sexuality as a way to kind of root for her. She uses her mind or to figure out what's going on. She in any case, she actually uses her epilepsy. She uses something that's set against her to try and overcome or circumvent this game that she's trapped in. And so I think that kind of switches up things. When I was younger, my sister used to have these sleepovers, and they used to watch scary movies the whole time. And I remember we watched things like I Know What You Did Last Summer, and like Halloween, the Candyman, like Friday the 13th and stuff like that. And I think the funny thing, because that's my time, I was born in the 90s, so I think that kind of hysterical girl who runs through, like that scene of Sarah Michelle Gellar where she's running through and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and she's, you know what I mean? Like there's that, there's that thing. And so that, I think that takes the stage of the film really early, and then kind of is really plowed into by these women who use every conceivable agenda to kind of get ahead, whether it's kind of Sheena, who she uses her ruthlessness, she uses her fear of being killed to summon the strength to try and take immense immoral actions. You know what I mean? So and I think that's, women are just as corruptible or resourceful or cunning or manipulative or compassionate or strong as men. And I liked that Tony wanted to delve into that. But my reference was Buffy. You know, as contradictory as that is, I grew up on Buffy. I remember I used to watch every Thursday night with my sisters. We used to sit down and watch a new episode of Buffy, and I said that to Tony, and he was like pish posh because he's watched every conceivable horror film. But I loved Buffy, and I love that image that Joss Whedon has of the girl going into the being chased by the vampires, going into the dark alley, and then the camera coming closer and seeing that she's this vampire slayer and that she's fighting back. I loved that. So I guess that was an influence on me for sure.
Yeah, now that you say it, I can see that in your character a little bit now.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, how you're not gonna take anything from these guys, and you're still even in the poster. Like I could imagine being the poster being a poster for Buffy.
Oh, definitely.
Just looking at it.
I always liked that Buffy she was only like Mufasa, she was only brave when she had to be Buffy, she was only heroic, or do you know what I mean? And she and that sense of compassion, and I like that. I like that the protagonist had that. She had a sense of compassion or kinship for her friends, So I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I waffle a lot. I'm a big waffler, but yeah, and I'm jet lagged. So but,
that is quite all right. No, actually, I came into this movie, with a title like The Furies and whatnot, and knowing that there's the psycho killers and the girls and everything like that, even as coming into it, I'm thinking, I look at and correct me if I'm wrong, but I looked at it going into it like, okay, if you're defining anybody, the bad guy, the men are the furious ones and whatnot, and to go and realize that it's the women who are basically defining the name of the movie, because they're the ones who are they're getting painted into a corner and taking that stand and saying, I'm going to be the one that's going to overpower you.
Yeah, and the men are these victims because they have, it's a slasher flick and it's fun. And you can look into it as much as you want, but the men are essentially stripped of their humanity from the get-go. If you want to go deep into the film, you could say that they were ultimately masked and chained by patriarchy. You know what I mean? That they have an inability to connect to their humane side because of which. The more you read about masks in horror films, you see that that's Michael Myers wears a mask because, or even like the Phantom of the Opera, they wear masks because it enables a detachment from their humanity. And Tony, when we were talking about making the film, he kind of said that he wanted to articulate that patriarchy affects men just as much. And I thought, whether it's visible in the film or not, but I thought that was quite almost compassionate to men, to say that it affects them as well. There are aspects of internalized kind of misogyny in the film with certain characters, in seeing the way that they act or the way they choose to fend for themselves ultimately. But I liked that. I liked that aspect of saying that it's two-way, that men also suffer. Yeah. But I don't know. Did you find that?
The victim.
Yeah, that it's everyone's issue and a big issue. So yeah.
So I went into October going, you know what, Casey, he's the horror guy. I'm more of an action and whatnot. I'm like, I'm going to go in October though, and I'm just going to start binge watching a bunch of horror movies just to kind of get in the mood for Halloween and everything like that. And going into this here, I look at the special effects in here and the kills and everything like that. I think are very top notch, and I think the film does very well into blurring the lines of what is legit, real versus a fake and whatnot. What was it like working with some of those special effects?
Yeah. Did you feel ill watching the film?
No, not that bad. I've gotten really close with one or two here recently, but no. I usually am relatively able to be detached enough to know, okay, I know it's not real and whatnot, but there's like when you're, not to give spoilers or anything like that, but in regards to the eye or like some of like, the axe
The
kills,
axe in the face.
that one or the one towards the end, just the bloody arm, stuff like that. I mean, just overall, I mean, everything. I mean, it looks very well done to the point where this is something that you don't typically see in smaller movies. And I'm actually very very glad to see that a lot of time and energy went into that to make it look that much better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we shot the film on 20 days. So Larry, our prosthetics guy, he made all of the masks, like the prosthetic masks for all of the kills and the monsters before. They were originally going to be just like paper masks, like just like a small homage to Michael Myers. But then I think Larry kind of stepped in and said, no, I think this is kind of really worth exploring. And so the ideas of the characters kind of sprawled out from there. So I think there were like 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the girls, they're waxed, like these incredibly intricate like wax masks. And so we only had like 2 or 3 takes for each kind of shot because of like time constrictions. But like Larry, the guy, he was like relentless. Like he would come in and paint things up until the last second, and he was just kind of fixated on it being as authentic as possible. So I think it's like I think it's so good that everyone has like really championed that aspect of the film to go, these are so real. And so yeah, so that was cool.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always like, especially looking into a slasher movie is yeah, you're there for the kills, but like this movie, it has the characters behind it as well. But when you can balance the two, like the Furies does, and have characters that you can root for, but then you also have these kills that are you're asking yourself constantly, like, how did they do that? And the one that sticks out in my head is the axe
at the beginning,
in the face in the beginning. And when I like, if I see a cool kill, I'll react to it while I'm watching. Even if I'm watching it by myself, I'll react to it, and that got a reaction out of me. And I think that's one of the biggest things a movie can do. And then I want to kind of jump to the end a little bit. I don't want to spoil the ending, but I really loved the ending and the twist it took, and took the entire story from the movie. Did you have a reaction to reading the script for the first time and seeing that ending and the way the movie and your character was going to turn out?
Oh, I don't want to give away too much. It's hard. Yeah, yeah. I think I was happy reading it, because I think she kind of ends up like, oh, I don't want to give away too much. I like that. Oh, look. Let's just go in for a penny and for a pound. I like that she kind of circumvents the game. You know what I mean? I like that she kind of, there's a system, and like, like it kind of goes as far as like dealing with an issue of capitalism, that the girl, in a like a sense of that, like girl with the dragon tattoo thing, where she kind of tries to usurp and take action against the system that's kind of chastised her, or, made her suffer. And I think at the end of the day, she's so changed by that experience that it felt really fit that she would go out and, yeah. So I feel like I've given it away, but I liked that ending. No, I think some people have 2 ways on the ending. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like some people don't really like it, and I think that's fair enough. But I think it's so important to have some kind of, not hopeful, that's not the right word, but some kind of wash up, because it's such a destructive film. There's so much damage. There's so much there's so much trauma, and the only way, I think that was just the only way to move forward with it. And the only way, if you were in that situation, you'd want to find some kind of retribution or hope or something out of it, because she's really so gutted in that film. So I liked it. I didn't know it was going to kind of be like that. I didn't know that when I read it. I didn't have any idea how kind of costly or how spent I would feel that the ending, I could never picture the ending feeling totally earned. But I think it comes out okay. So it's good.
Kind of rolling off of that, obviously, is as much as we don't want to give too much away and whatnot. You know, I looked at it as if Tony did decide to come back and do a follow up to this, would this be something that, based on your experience and whatnot, that you'd want to revisit the role of Kayla and see where that character could go?
Yeah, I think if it's kind of warranted, if it speaks to like a larger narrative of a girl trying to kind of usurp, take action against that system. Well, I think that's really interesting. Like, it's a great conceit and like something that a lot of women can really relate to. I think so. But you just don't know where that character's kind of gonna go. But right. I liked that it ended on that note.
So you're saying that in the event that this becomes standalone, you're okay with where we go and kind of leaving the rest up to interpretation and how we see how it possibly goes.
Yeah, I'm not kind of sure. I know that Tony really wants to make another film and explore it, but I'm just not sure where we can. Like, there are so many options where we can take that world and that character. But I'm just not the way that things are right now with, like, not just women in Hollywood but like women in the world, and I think there's so much internalized misogyny that's kind of bleeding out into, like, I don't know how you guys feel, but it's kind of bleeding out into films in really interesting ways. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's a bit of a spillover in terms of women not coddling their feelings around such a big thing like patriarchy and misogyny. Like, so I think it'd be really interesting to see where like a horror film can explore that. Like, something as kind of accessible as a horror film can kind of take that. No, I'd be interested in it, to be honest. But I'm just not sure. It's just so important that it's said well and done well, because what draws, the responses that the film's had and how people enjoy that character means something to me. That sounds really soppy, but it does, and it's no flyaway thing. So it has to be done well.
Definitely.
Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, you feel ownership after playing her. If I'm not mistaken, or to put words in your mouth, but this is your character. You helped build her, and I mean, you'd like to see a good ending come out of it, or this movie wraps her story up perfectly the way that it is too. So
yeah, I think so. I think it could. I think it could just be wrapped up perfectly, and at the same time, if it means something to women or men, you know what I mean? If it means something, then that's all the more reason to think about the weight of another film or the weight of her actions moving forward. Because, like, we had this thing, I don't know if you've seen it, it's called Nanette. Have you seen Nanette?
Yeah.
It's on Netflix, that comedy special.
Okay, yeah.
Hannah Gadsby. And she's a gay comedian who spent her whole life making jokes about essentially being an Australian gay comedian, and after a while she started to say, if I'm making art or comedy or jokes about myself, what does that say about me, and what does that say about the people that I kind of represent? And so I think the same's to be said if you're playing a young woman, even though it's a different character to you, and if it's if it's got to do with feminism or some kind of hero or kind of there's respect like allotted to that character, you want it to go ahead well, and you want to honor the people who relate to that. There are people who have written about the film and said, I've never seen a character who has a disability portrayed in that way. And so I think it's just got to kind of hold that up. That's what I'm trying to say, however inarticulately. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I got that from it. Yeah, it does, and I think that is a testament to the movie, that everything it does, it holds up, and it does it, I guess, in a respectful way, but also it doesn't pull any punches by creating very tense situations for all these characters in the movie. So, yeah, I definitely give it props for that.
Oh, cool. Thanks, mate.
Brian, do you have any other questions? Otherwise, I got one more.
No, I was gonna say I kind of ran out.
I got one more for you. We're nearing Halloween here, and you said you grew up in the '90s and you watched a lot of those Halloween or those horror films. Do you have any like one or two movies that you like to watch every year around this time of the year?
I Know What You Did Last Summer. I just love it. I love Sarah Michelle Gellar. I love the high-waisted jeans and just the way that they fight and the angst of that film, the way that they get so mad at each other. And where she's like, what are you waiting for, huh? I love the time and the place and the music and all of those just all of those aspects of the 90s. So probably that one. My sister and I, we used to do there was this channel called Fox 8, and they used to have a thing in between Boxing Day and Christmas called Slayer Fest, and we have she has every episode of Buffy, and so we probably watched that a little bit together. But in terms of Halloween, maybe just I Know What You Did Last Summer, or the Halloween films. I like Halloween H2O. I love the Scream films. My favorite's the first one, but the sequels are pretty good. And I'm happy. Sorry, I'm waffling again. I'm just gonna stick with I Know What You Did Last Summer. Sorry.
No, that's a great pick. I love I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's one of my favorite '90s slasher movies. Well, it's so good.
She gave the Jennifer Love Hewitt quote, and then all I'm just picturing is that top shot where she's just spinning around, screaming.
It's such a good shot. Yeah.
I think that's awesome. Oh yeah, and I love the sequel. That's one of my favorite sequels where they go and those those scenes where you're like, oh, who is it? And then the killer comes out and he's like, what's your favorite radio station, Jules? And just those scenes, they're so a part of my childhood. Just, I think my sister and I, we kind of bonded over that. So, What about you guys? What are you going to watch this
Probably my best throwback going back to watch the sequel to I Know What You Did Last Summer is realizing Jack Black is in that movie is a dreadlocked hippie. And it just... I hadn't seen him for such a long time, and I was like, holy shit.
I love it when he's when the guy who works at the hotel is killed, and then there's just that shot of Jack Black turning around, smoking the joint and then walking away. The comic choices are just, he's so good at that. So funny. Yeah, great film. I always would tell Tony about this other film, Trolls. Have you seen Trolls?
I've seen Troll 2. I don't know if I've seen Trolls.
I was like, we have to get this moment. There's this actor, he goes, it's this clip on YouTube. He's like, they're eating her, and then they're going to eat me. Oh my God. It's so we were like, we have to find a way to get in a, oh my God moment. But I think it got on the cutting room floor in the end. So
that's unfortunate because I love that movie, and that line is one of my favorite things ever to put to screen.
Oh my God. I think Australians really like Halloween, but we still haven't found that fanaticism here. I think because we're all quite reserved or shy. We don't have that like full on Halloween thing. It's done so well in America. I bet. Is it crazy in South Dakota?
Halloween? Yeah. Most Halloweens end up with snow, but I mean, it's
I was
still.
gonna say if we don't have 4 feet of snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually kids have their cool Halloween costumes on and then their winter coat over it. So no matter what they are, they'll be Spider-Man with a winter coat, so it's always something like that.
I was a vampire once where I had the winter coat.
With a winter coat?
No, but I had it underneath my outfit, so I was just a fat vampire.
What's your favorite vampire? Like vampire story, vampire film?
Ooh, vampire film. I'd almost have to go with Bram Stoker's Dracula. There's just something about Gary Oldman as Dracula was just always fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's such a great character that kind of, I don't know, it's like it could be done time and time over.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
I always got to go with Nosferatu and Interview with the Vampire. Like those are some of my favorites.
Talk about 90s films. That's a good film. Just saying, everyone.
Yeah. So I'll wrap this up here. We don't want to keep you too much longer here. Where can people find the film?
So the film is streaming on Shudder at the minute. So that's probably the best place to do it in the US. The film comes out in Australia on, I think, November 7th, early November. We'll be playing here. And then I think it's got a UK release and a Spanish release at the moment. But Shudder's probably the best spot for now. And I think it's playing at a festival in Toronto in the next couple of weeks. I don't know the name. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so jet lagged. But yes, Shudder. Shudder is the key.
Shudder is the best place to go. I agree with that. That is one of the best streaming services you can have even if you're just a casual movie fan. Shudder, that's the best place to go.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. It was really fun.
Thank you so much for being on, and we'd love to have you back on and maybe talk some more. I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah. What a film. What a time.
Oh, it's so good. All right. Thank you so much again for being on, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you later. Bye.
Thank you again to Airlie Dodds for joining us. She is the star of the Shudder exclusive film, The Furies, this Australian slasher. If you haven't, check it out. Go check out Shudder. It's October. Pay your $5 for this awesome service. Like $5 a month. Like that is like literally the best thing, and that pays for the movie in itself.
Nerd.
Yeah, I am a nerd. That was a lot of fun though. That was fun.
We definitely need to try to figure out how to get her back on.
Yeah, definitely. I was serious about that. I Know What You Did Last Summer.
That you thoroughly enjoyed that movie?
I do thoroughly enjoy it, and I'd love to have her back on to talk about them. I have never actually watched the sequels.
Maybe we need to do something for like 90s horror, like our Screams and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and see if get her on and have her let's talk some 90s horror.
That seems like that's up her alley. H2O, she mentioned. That's one of my favorites. So we'll figure something out. That'll be coming out. We'll figure that out. I don't know when that's coming out. We'll figure it out.
What you're saying is we should tell her.
Yeah. So thank you all again for listening. You can go check out The Furies once again on Shudder. You can find us on backlot605.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, backlot605. We're super easy to find. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast, and YouTube. What else do we have, Brian? I think that's it.
That's all we got for right now.
That's all we got for right now. We'll see you next time on the Backlot of South Dakota.